The silence in Professor Vextar's classroom was suffocating. 23 alien students from across the galaxy sat frozen, staring at the holographic display that showed a small blue planet rotating slowly in the center of the room. HFY assignment, Professor Vextar announced, his 6 eyes gleaming with what his students had learned to recognize as cruel amusement, is to study the inhabitants of this world and determine if they pose any threat to the Galactic Empire. Zara, a young Cathani with silver scales and 4 arms, raised one hand tentatively. Professor, what makes this planet special? It looks ordinary. The professor's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among his species. Ordinary? Oh, my dear student, that's exactly what makes them dangerous. This planet is called Earth, and its dominant species calls themselves humans. He paused, letting the word hang in the air like a curse. They have no advanced technology, no energy shields, no plasma weapons. They can't even leave their own solar system reliably. Crix, a towering Vorthax student with crystalline skin, snorted dismissively. Then why are we studying such primitive creatures? Professor Vextar's expression grew serious, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Because 3 months ago, a human ship appeared in our space. Just one ship. Damaged. Barely functional. He manipulated the hologram, showing a crude metal vessel that looked like scrap compared to their sleek alien craft. Our finest military minds laughed when they saw it. The classroom was dead silent now. Even the usual rustling of wings and clicking of claws had stopped. That ship, the professor continued, destroyed an entire battle fleet before disappearing, back into the void. 17 of our most advanced warships, gone. The few survivors who escaped spoke of something they called impossible tactics, and death incarnate. Zara felt her scales prickle with unease. Surely that's an exaggeration, Professor. How could such a primitive species— That, Vextar interrupted, is what you're going to find out. You have 1 week to study these humans and report back on what makes them so dangerous that our High Command has classified them as a Class X threat. He gestured to the peaceful-looking blue world. Remember, appearances can be deceiving. Sometimes the deadliest predators are the ones that don't look dangerous at all. As the students filed out of the classroom, whispering nervously among themselves, Zara lingered behind. She stared at the rotating image of Earth, watching white clouds swirl over green and brown continents. It looked so beautiful, so serene. What secret could a world like this possibly hold? Zara, Professor Vextar called as she reached the door. A word of advice. Don't let their appearance fool you. Humans may look weak, but they come from a world that has been trying to kill them since the day they first drew breath. That tends to have consequences. As Zara walked through the corridor toward the research lab, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was about to uncover something that would change everything she thought she knew about the universe. The professor's words echoed in her mind. Sometimes the deadliest predators are the ones that don't look dangerous at all. What exactly had that human ship done to destroy 17 warships? And more importantly, what other secrets was Earth hiding? The research lab hummed with nervous energy as Zara and her study group gathered around the central console. Crix loomed over them, his crystalline form refracting the light from the screens in rainbow patterns. Pip, a small insectoid Zephyrian, clicked anxiously while Thorn, a gaseous nebular entity, swirled in an agitated purple hue. I've accessed the Imperial Archives, Zara announced, her 4 hands dancing across multiple keyboards simultaneously. Let me show you what happened during first contact. The holographic display materialized, showing a sleek Imperial reconnaissance ship approaching Earth's moon. The date stamp read, 2387 Standard Galactic Time. This was supposed to be a routine scouting mission, Zara narrated as they watched the events unfold. The ship was equipped with advanced cloaking technology. The humans shouldn't have been able to detect them. On screen, the Imperial ship moved silently through space, its sensors scanning the primitive human settlements on the lunar surface. Everything seemed normal, until alarms began blaring throughout the alien vessel. What's happening? Pip chittered, his compound eyes reflecting the red warning lights from the hologram. The recording shifted to the ship's internal cameras. Panic filled the corridors as crew members rushed to battle stations. The captain, A proud Xyrillian with blue skin and ceremonial scars was shouting orders that the universal translator rendered into their common tongue. "How did they lock onto us? Our stealth systems are impenetrable, sir," came a trembling voice. From the communications officer, "We're receiving a transmission from the human settlement. Audio only." The captain's expression shifted from anger to confusion. "Put it through!" A calm, distinctly human voice filled the Imperial ship's bridge. "Unknown vessel. This is Luna Base Command. You have been detected in restricted space. Identify yourself immediately, or we will consider you a hostile threat." Zara paused the recording. "Note the timeline here. The humans detected a fully cloaked Imperial scout ship within 30 seconds of it entering their territory. Our own records show that no other species has ever managed to do that." Crix's crystalline body pulsed with skeptical light. "Perhaps their sensors are more advanced than we assumed." "That's what the Imperial Command thought too," Zara replied, grimly. She resumed the playback. The Xyrillian captain, arrogant and dismissive, had chosen to ignore the human warning. The ship continued its scan, treating the primitive creatures as insignificant. That was their first mistake. The recording showed the captain 15 minutes later, no longer arrogant but screaming in terror as his ship shook violently. Through the viewports, they could see streaks of light converging on their position from multiple directions. "Impossible!" the captain shouted. "Those are kinetic projectiles. How are they achieving such accuracy at this range?" The tactical officer's voice cracked with fear. "Sir, they're not using energy weapons at all. They're firing chunks of metal, but the precision is... It's like they can see exactly where we are, even cloaked." Thorn swirled darker, his gaseous form condensing with anxiety. "Kinetic weapons against Imperial shields? That should be ineffective." Zara's scales darkened to a troubled shade of silver. "Watch what happens next." The first projectile struck the Imperial ship's shields, and the barrier held for exactly 0.3 seconds. The metal slug somehow adapted mid-flight, its composition shifting in real time to match the shield's frequency. The barrier collapsed like tissue paper. The second projectile punched through the hull like it was made of soft clay. The third and fourth followed, each one precisely targeted at critical systems. Within minutes, the mighty Imperial scout ship was drifting dead in space, its crew unconscious from emergency stasis fields. The human voice came through the communication system again, still calm, still utterly professional. "Unknown vessel. You are now disabled and will be boarded for inspection. Do not resist, and you will not be harmed." The recording ended there, leaving the study group in stunned silence. "The boarding party found the crew alive but completely helpless," Zara continued quietly. "The humans examined their technology, took extensive scans of everything, then they let them go." "They let them go?" Pip's voice was barely a whisper. "With a message," Zara confirmed. "They told the Xyrillian captain to inform his superiors that Earth was under human protection, and that any future incursions would be met with appropriate force." Crix's light patterns shifted to deep orange, the color of fear among his people. That was just one mining base on their moon. What kind of species casually disables Imperial technology like it's a toy? As if reading his thoughts, Zara brought up the next file. "That's what the High Command wanted to know. So they sent a battlecruiser." The new recording showed a massive Imperial warship, bristling with enough firepower to crack a planet's surface. As it approached Earth's solar system, confident and unstoppable, Zara couldn't help but notice how small and fragile Earth looked in comparison. "What happened to the battlecruiser?" Thorn asked, though his swirling form suggested he already feared the answer. Zara's finger hovered over the play button. "Let's find out." The massive Imperial battlecruiser Eternal Dominance cut through space like a predator stalking its prey. Its hull gleamed with ceremonial armor plating, and its weapon arrays could reduce a city to ash in seconds. Captain Mordak, a veteran Krelian warrior with acid-scarred carapace and 3 rows of razor teeth, had never known defeat. "Pathetic," he growled as Earth grew larger on the main screen. "Command expects me to be cautious of these humans? I've conquered 17 worlds. This will be over in an hour." Zara paused the recording to address her study group. "The Eternal Dominance was one of our most advanced warships. Captain Mordak had served for over 2 centuries. He'd faced the plasma lords of Xerion, the hive queens of Terminus 7, even the shadow fleets of the Void Nebula. And he was approaching Earth like any other conquest, Crix observed, his crystalline form pulsing with unease. Exactly, Zara confirmed, resuming the playback. The recording showed the bridge of the Imperial warship as it crossed into Earth's solar system. Sensor operators called out readings in calm, professional voices. Everything seemed routine until they passed Jupiter. Sir, the sensor chief reported, I'm detecting unusual activity throughout the system. Captain Mordak barely looked up from his tactical display. Define unusual. There are objects moving. Lots of them. Small craft, but they're everywhere. In the asteroid belt, around the gas giants, even hiding in the comet clouds. The sensor operator's voice carried a note of confusion. Sir, I count over 3,000 individual signatures. 3,000 mining ships? Mordak laughed, his mandibles clicking with amusement. These humans are more industrious than I expected. No matter. Open communications. I'll give them one chance to surrender before I demonstrate Imperial power. The communications array activated, broadcasting on all frequencies. Captain Mordak's image would be transmitted to every human settlement in the system, a terrifying alien warrior demanding submission. Attention, primitive humans, his voice boomed across space. I am Captain Mordak of the Galactic Empire. You will surrender your world immediately, or face the consequences of defying Imperial will. You have 10 of your minutes to respond. The bridge fell silent. Mordak had delivered this same ultimatum to dozens of species. Most surrendered immediately. The stubborn ones were crushed within hours. This time was different. The response came not as words, but as action. Every one of those 3,000 small craft suddenly changed course, converging on the eternal dominance from every direction simultaneously. Sir! The tactical officer shouted. Those aren't mining ships! They're armed! On the main screen, the approaching vessels became clear. They were ugly, asymmetrical things. Nothing like the sleek Imperial designs. They looked like they'd been built in someone's garage from spare parts and held together with determination. Pathetic, Mordak sneered. Primitive chemical rockets and kinetic weapons. Raise shields and target their largest concentrations. We'll end this quickly. That was when the humans showed their first surprise. The small craft didn't attack the Imperial ship directly. Instead, they began releasing clouds of tiny objects, millions of them, scattered throughout space around the eternal dominance. What are they doing? The sensor chief asked, confusion clear in his voice. The answer came when Captain Mordak ordered his gunners to fire. The ship's mighty plasma cannons charged up, energy readings climbing to devastating levels. But when they fired, something impossible happened. The plasma bolts struck the scattered objects and changed. The energy was somehow redirected, bent, twisted through angles that shouldn't exist. Instead of destroying the human ships, the Imperial weapons fire curved back toward the eternal dominance itself. Shields, Mordak roared. The redirected plasma struck the Imperial ship's own barriers, which held, barely. But now the 3,000 human vessels were moving in complex patterns, releasing more of those mysterious objects, creating an intricate web of space around the massive warship. They're hurting us, the tactical officer whispered in horror. Every time we fire, they redirect our own weapons. We're trapped in a cage made of our own firepower. Pip chittered nervously at this point in the recording. How is that possible? Energy doesn't just bend like that. Zara manipulated the display, zooming in on the mysterious objects the humans had deployed. Imperial scientists still don't understand the physics involved. The humans somehow created temporary gravity wells using compressed matter. They turned space itself into a weapon. On screen, Captain Mordak was no longer the confident conqueror. Sweat beaded on his scarred carapace as he watched his mighty warship being slowly maneuvered by forces he couldn't comprehend. Sir, came a terrified voice from engineering. They're not just redirecting our weapons, they're studying them. Each shot we fire, their response gets more precise. It's like they're learning. The humans had turned the eternal dominance into a laboratory. Rat, trapped in a maze of its own making. Every move the Imperial ship made only gave the humans more data, more understanding of their technology. And then came the voice that would haunt Mordak's nightmares for the rest of his life. Calm, professional, utterly human. Imperial vessel. This is Admiral Chen of the Seoul Defense Force. You entered our system with hostile intent and threatened our worlds. Normally, that would mean your destruction. However, we're prepared to offer you a choice. The recording showed Mordak's face, a mixture of rage, fear, and dawning respect for an enemy he'd underestimated. You have 30 seconds to power down your weapons and prepare to be escorted out of our system, Admiral Chen continued. Or we can show you what happens when humans stop being polite. As the study group watched in fascination and terror, they realized they were witnessing the moment when the galaxy's greatest military force met humanity for the first time, and the humans were winning. Power down weapons? Captain Mordak's laugh was harsh and bitter. I am Krillian. I am Imperial Navy. I do not surrender to primitives. Admiral Chen's response was immediate. Very well. Class is now in session. Zara paused the recording as her study group leaned forward, transfixed. What you're about to see, she said quietly, is why the Imperial High Command reclassified humans from primitive to Class X threat in the span of 17 minutes. The holographic display showed the space around the Eternal Dominance as those 3,000 human vessels began moving in perfect synchronization. What had seemed like random positioning suddenly revealed itself as an intricate mathematical pattern. Engineering! Captain Mordak barked. Full power to forward shields! Ram through their formations! The massive Imperial warship surged forward, its engines burning at maximum output. For a moment, it seemed like brute force might triumph over human cleverness. Then the math began. The first human ship in their path didn't try to dodge. Instead, it fired a single kinetic projectile, not at the Eternal Dominance, but at a specific point in space ahead of the Imperial vessel. The projectile struck one of the gravity well generators the humans had deployed earlier. The effect was immediate and devastating. The compressed matter device released its stored energy in a controlled burst, creating a localized gravitational anomaly that grabbed the massive Imperial ship and pulled it off course by exactly 3.7 degrees. Compensating, the helmsman called out, adjusting their trajectory. The second human ship fired. Another gravity well triggered. Another course correction. This time 2.1 degrees in the opposite direction. They're not trying to destroy us, the tactical officer whispered in growing horror. They're doing math. They're calculating our exact position using physics. By the 10th course correction, Captain Mordak realized the terrible truth. Humans weren't fighting them. They were solving them. Like an equation. Every shot, every maneuver, every response was part of a vast calculation that treated the mighty Eternal Dominance like a variable to be manipulated. Sir, the sensor chief called out, I'm reading massive energy signatures converging on our position. Whatever they're planning, it's... The ship shuddered as thousands of kinetic projectiles struck simultaneously. Not the hull, but the space around it. Each impact triggered one of the gravity well generators, and suddenly, the Eternal Dominance was caught in a web of artificial gravity that pulled it in precisely controlled directions. Thorne swirled anxiously as he watched the recording. They're treating a kilometer-long warship like a toy. More than that, Zara replied, highlighting tactical data streaming across the Imperial ship's displays. They're demonstrating complete mastery of forces our own scientists barely understand. Watch what happens next. On screen, Admiral Chen's voice returned, still calm, still professional. Captain Mordak, you're currently experiencing what we call a gravity slingshot on a micro scale. Your ship is being accelerated through a series of artificial gravity wells, each one precisely calculated to add velocity while maintaining structural integrity. The Imperial captain's face had gone pale. What are you doing to my ship? Teaching you physics, Chen replied. You see, Captain, humans have a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog. You brought a very large ship to threaten a very small world, but you made one critical error. The Eternal Dominance was now moving at tremendous speed, but not in the direction Captain Mordak had intended. The humans were using their gravity manipulation to essentially throw the massive warship like a stone from a slingshot. You assumed that superior technology meant superior thinking, Admiral Chen continued. But humans have been fighting wars since before we invented the wheel. We've learned that the deadliest weapon isn't the biggest gun. It's the mind that knows how to use whatever tools are available. The display showed the Imperial ship's trajectory. The humans were slingshotting the eternal dominance directly toward Earth's sun. "Stop this!" Mordak roared. "You're going to kill us all!" "Actually, no." Chen's voice carried a note of what almost sounded like amusement. "We're going to demonstrate something called precision. Watch your navigation display, Captain." The ship's computers began calculating their trajectory, and slowly, Captain Mordak realized what the humans had done. They weren't sending the eternal dominance into the sun. They were sending it around the sun, using the star's gravity to add even more velocity to their slingshot maneuver. "In approximately 14 minutes, Admiral Chen explained, your ship will complete a solar orbit and be ejected from our system at roughly 12% of light speed. You'll arrive back at the nearest Imperial outpost in about 6 months, assuming your life support holds out." Pip's compound eyes reflected his amazement. "They calculated a solar gravity assist while fighting a battle?" "While winning a battle," Zara corrected. But they weren't done teaching their lesson. The recording showed the moment when the eternal dominance whipped around Earth's sun, its hull glowing from the intense heat but somehow remaining intact. As it began its long journey back to Imperial space, every human ship in the system formed up in perfect formation and transmitted a single message in unison. "Tell your Empire that Earth remembers every species that threatens our home. Tell them that humans don't start fights, but we do finish them. And tell them that if they send a fleet next time, we'll send it back in pieces small enough to fit in an envelope." Captain Mordak, strapped into his command chair and helpless to do anything but watch his ship career through space at unimaginable speed, managed one final transmission. What are you?" Admiral Chen's response would become legendary throughout the galaxy. "We're humans, Captain. We're the species that looked at a universe trying to kill us and decided to become unkillable instead. We're the creatures that took a planet covered in things designed to eat us, and we ate them first. We're what happens when evolution runs out of ways to make a species stronger, so it makes them smarter instead." The recording ended with the eternal dominance disappearing into the void, carrying its shaken crew back to an empire that would never look at humanity the same way again. Zara's study group sat in stunned silence until Crix finally spoke. "They used an entire star system as a weapon. And that," Zara whispered, "was when they were being merciful." 3 weeks after the eternal dominance limped back to Imperial space, the High Command made a decision that would haunt the galaxy for generations. Admiral Thexvar, the Empire's most decorated military commander, stood before the War Council with his proposal displayed in holographic detail. "The humans defeated Captain Mordak through trickery and superior positioning," he declared, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had never lost a battle. "But tactics mean nothing when faced with overwhelming force." Zara fast-forwarded through the Imperial strategic planning sessions for her study group. The Empire decided that if humans could defeat one ship through clever physics, they'd send a force too large for cleverness to matter. The hologram showed the assembly of Battlefleet Omega, 50 of the Empire's most advanced warships, including 3 planet-killer dreadnoughts. Each vessel carried enough firepower to sterilize a world, and together they represented nearly 1/10 of the Imperial Navy's total strength. "Surely the humans couldn't defeat this," Crix observed, his crystalline form pulsing with uncertainty. "The Imperial Command thought the same thing," Zara replied grimly. They were about to learn their second lesson about humanity. The recording shifted to the bridge of the flagship Galactic Sovereignty, where Admiral Thexvar reviewed his battle plans with cold satisfaction. His strategy was simple: jump into Earth's solar system with overwhelming force, demand immediate surrender, and demonstrate Imperial power to any watching civilizations. "No tricks this time," he told his assembled captains via holographic conference. "No games. We jump in at maximum alert, shields raised, weapons hot. If the humans so much as twitch, we reduce their world to molten slag." The day of the invasion dawned clear and bright on Earth. The recording showed peaceful scenes from the planet's surface. Children playing in parks, people going about their daily lives, completely unaware that 50 alien warships were about to appear in their sky. Then space tore open. Battlefleet Omega materialized in perfect formation just outside Earth's orbit. their massive hulls blotting out stars. The sight should have been terrifying. 50 ships of war appearing like avenging gods above a defenseless world. Instead, Admiral Thexvar found himself staring at something that made his blood run cold. Earth was gone. "Sensor report," he barked, his composure cracking for the first time in decades. "Sir," came the trembling response. "I'm reading nothing. The planet isn't there. There's no debris field, no energy signatures. It's just empty space." The study group watched in fascination as the Imperial fleet frantically scanned the area where Earth should have been. Their sensors showed nothing but void, as if the entire planet had simply vanished. "Impossible," Admiral Thexvar muttered. "You can't hide a planet." That was when the human voice spoke from everywhere and nowhere, transmitted on frequencies that shouldn't exist. "Actually, Admiral, you'd be surprised what you can hide when you put your mind to it." The Imperial ship spun in all directions, trying to locate the source of the transmission. Their sensors detected nothing but empty space. "I am Admiral Sarah Reeves of the Earth Defense Force," the voice continued conversationally. "And you, Admiral Thexvar, have made a very interesting assumption. You assumed that because we defended ourselves in our own system, we would wait for you to come to us again." A chill ran through every Imperial bridge as the implications sank in. "You see, Admiral, humans learned a long time ago that the best defense is a good offense. While you were gathering your fleet, we were studying the wreckage your friend Captain Mordak left behind. Very educational, Imperial technology, especially your navigation systems. The holographic display showed what happened next, something that would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come." Space around Battlefleet Omega began to shimmer like heat waves. The empty void where Earth should have been suddenly flickered, and for just a moment the planet reappeared. But it wasn't alone. Surrounding Earth in perfect defensive formation were thousands of ships. Not the crude, cobbled-together vessels from the previous encounter, but sleek, deadly craft that incorporated design elements from Imperial technology mixed with something uniquely human. "Adaptive engineering," Admiral Reeves explained helpfully. "We took your gravity manipulation technology, your shield generators, and your faster-than-light communication systems. Then we made them better." Admiral Thexvar's voice was barely a whisper. "How many ships?" "All of them," came the cheerful reply. The illusion dropped completely, revealing not just Earth's defensive fleet, but something far more terrifying. Every asteroid in the system had been converted into a weapons platform. Every moon was bristling with defensive installations. The humans hadn't just hidden their planet. They'd turned their entire solar system into the galaxy's most sophisticated fortress. "You brought 50 ships to attack our home," Admiral Reeves observed. "We appreciate the compliment, but it's a bit insulting, don't you think? After all, this is where humans live. This is where we keep our families, our children, our future. Did you really think 50 ships would be enough?" Thorne swirled nervously as he watched the recording. "How did they build all of this in just 3 weeks?" "They didn't," Zara replied quietly. "Analysis of the wreckage later showed that some of those installations had been under construction for years. The humans had been preparing for this kind of invasion long before they ever encountered the Empire." On screen, Admiral Thexvar was realizing the same thing. You knew we would come." "Admiral," Sarah Reeves's voice carried a note of gentle condescension. "Humans have been fighting wars for thousands of years. The first rule of warfare is that if someone hits you, their friends are probably going to come looking for revenge. We've been expecting you since the day we sent Captain Mordak home." The Imperial Admiral looked around at his fleet, 50 of the most powerful warships in the galaxy, and for the first time in his career, he felt truly outmatched. "Now then," Admiral Reeves continued, "let's discuss your immediate future. You have 2 choices. Choice 1. You can attack us, and we'll demonstrate exactly what humans do to people who threaten our children. Choice 2. You can listen to our terms for your withdrawal." Admiral Thexvar, veteran of 100 battles, found himself asking a question he'd never expected to voice. "What are your terms?" The answer would change the balance of power in the galaxy forever. "Our terms are simple," Admiral Reeves said, her voice carrying across 50 Imperial bridges simultaneously. "You're going to carry a message back to your empire, and you're going to carry it exactly as we give it to you. Admiral Thexvar gripped his command chair, watching as human ships maneuvered with impossible precision around his fleet. Each Imperial vessel was surrounded, but not threatened. Yet, the humans were demonstrating their power without using it, which somehow made them even more terrifying. "We're listening," he said through gritted teeth. "Good. Here's what you're going to tell your high command. Earth is officially withdrawing from galactic politics. We want no part of your empire, your wars, or your conquests. We will not expand beyond our system, and we will not interfere with your business." Zara paused the recording to address her study group. "This sounds reasonable, right? The humans were offering to isolate themselves. But watch Admiral Thexvar's reaction." The Imperial commander's expression shifted from tension to confusion to something approaching relief. "You're surrendering?" Admiral Reeves's laughter echoed across the communications channels. "Oh, Admiral, we're not surrendering. We're setting boundaries. There's a significant difference." "I don't understand." "Let me explain," Admiral Reeves continued patiently. "You see, humans have a concept called personal space. It means that while we don't want to bother you, we also don't want to be bothered by you. Our personal space happens to include our entire solar system." The holographic display around Thexvar's fleet began showing detailed scans of every human defensive installation. Gun platforms that could punch through Imperial armor. Shield generators that used principles their scientists didn't understand. Missile systems with ranges measured in light minutes. "Anyone who enters our personal space without permission," Admiral Reeves said conversationally, "will be asked to leave. Once. Politely. And if they refuse? Well, that's where things get interesting. You see, Admiral, humans have been studying your empire for the past few weeks. We've intercepted your communications, analyzed your ship designs, mapped your trade routes. We know where all your important worlds are." The temperature on every Imperial bridge seemed to drop several degrees. "We also know," Admiral Reeves continued cheerfully, "that your empire spans 17 systems, controls 43 inhabited worlds, and has a total population of roughly 800 billion sentient beings. Quite impressive, really." "Admiral," Thexvar's voice was barely a whisper, "you're threatening our entire civilization." "Oh no, Admiral. We're not threatening anyone. We're simply sharing information." The human admiral's tone remained pleasant, almost conversational. "For instance, did you know that your capital world's defense grid has a critical vulnerability in Sector 7? Or that your primary shipyards depend on a rare mineral that comes from exactly 3 mining worlds?" Every Imperial captain in the fleet was frantically checking their own intelligence reports, trying to verify what the human was saying. What they found made their blood run cold. Every piece of information Admiral Reeves had shared was absolutely accurate. "You've been preparing to invade us," Admiral Thexvar said, horror creeping into his voice. "Actually, no," Admiral Reeves replied, and for the first time, her tone carried a hint of something darker. "We've been preparing to defend ourselves." "There's a difference, Admiral, though I understand why a species like yours might not recognize it." The holographic display shifted, showing a new image that made every Imperial officer gasp in recognition. It was their own home system, but seen through human eyes, with human analysis overlaying every strategic point. "Humans don't invade," Admiral Reeves explained. "We don't conquer. We don't build empires. But when someone threatens our home, our families, our children, well, that's when we become very creative about problem solving." Pip chittered nervously as he watched the recording. "They analyzed the entire Imperial structure in 3 weeks?" "Less than that," Zara corrected. "Most of this intelligence was gathered during the 17 minutes it took them to defeat the Eternal Dominance. Every scan that ship performed was automatically transmitted back to Imperial Command. The humans intercepted those transmissions and used them to map the entire Empire." On screen, Admiral Thexvar was beginning to understand the true scope of what he was facing. "You're saying that if we attack you, if you attack us," Admiral Reeves confirmed, "we won't just defend ourselves. We'll make sure that no one ever threatens Earth again. And the most efficient way to do that is to ensure that anyone who might threaten us simply can't." The implication hung in space like a death sentence. "You would commit genocide?" Admiral Thexvar asked. we would end a threat, Admiral Reeves replied, her voice suddenly cold as the void between stars. There's a difference, Admiral. Humans don't kill for pleasure or conquest, but we have killed for survival, and we've gotten very, very good at it over the millennia. The recording showed the moment when the full weight of human capability settled. Over the Imperial fleet, 50 of their most advanced warships, surrounded by defensive systems they couldn't counter, facing an enemy that had turned strategic thinking into an art form. So, here's our message to your empire, Admiral Reeves concluded. Stay away from our system. Don't send scouts, don't send diplomats, don't send tourists. Earth is off limits. In exchange, we promise to stay in our corner of the galaxy and mind our own business. And if the Empire refuses these terms, the pause that followed would be analyzed by military historians for generations. Admiral Reeves said finally, has anyone ever explained to you what happens when you corner a social predator that's been successful for over 200,000 years? Admiral Thexavar, veteran of countless battles, chose not to answer that question. You have 24 hours to clear our system, Admiral Reeves continued. After that, you'll be considered hostile intruders. And Admiral, when you deliver our message to your high command, make sure they understand something very important. Which is? This conversation. This was us being diplomatic. 6 months later, Professor Vextar stood before his class, but the arrogant gleam in his 6 eyes had been replaced by something resembling respect and fear. The holographic display showed not Earth, but the Imperial capital world of Kethmore Prime, where emergency sessions of the High Command had been running continuously since Admiral Thexavar's return. Zara and her study group sat in the front row, no longer the naive students they had been a week ago. The knowledge they'd uncovered had changed them all. The universe suddenly seemed much larger and much more dangerous than they'd ever imagined. Your reports were illuminating? Professor Vextar began, his voice lacking its usual condescension. But before we discuss your findings, I believe you should know what has happened since Admiral Thexavar delivered the human message to High Command. The hologram shifted to show the Imperial War Council. Dozens of species from across the galaxy, all united under the Empire's banner. But instead of the confident military leaders Zara expected to see, the chamber was filled with nervous whispers and worried glances. The High Command's first instinct was to reject human terms, the professor continued. After all, no species had ever dictated policy to the Empire. So they began planning Operation Final Solution, a 1,000-ship armada that would reduce Earth to cosmic dust. Crix's crystalline form pulsed with anxiety. 1,000 ships? Surely even humans couldn't stand against such force. Professor Vextar's expression grew grim. That's what the High Command thought. They were wrong. The recording showed Admiral Thexavar standing before the War Council, his proud bearing replaced by something that looked suspiciously like post-traumatic stress. Honored counselors, he was saying, I must advise against any further military action against the human system. We are not equipped to fight this enemy. Supreme Commander Vorthak, a massive reptilian being whose species had conquered half the galaxy before joining the Empire, slammed his clawed fist on the conference table. You were defeated by primitives. Your reputation may be in ruins, Thexavar. But the Empire's is not. Then send your own fleet, Admiral Thexavar replied quietly. Send 1,000 ships. Send 10,000. It won't matter. Explain yourself, Vorthak demanded. Admiral Thexavar activated a holographic display that made every council member fall silent. It showed detailed tactical analyses, population estimates, resource calculations, all focused on a single, terrifying conclusion. Humans don't fight wars the way we do, he began. We conquer territory, establish dominance, and integrate new worlds into our empire. We fight to expand. Humans fight to survive. And when a species that has survived everything their world could throw at them for 200,000 years decides you're a threat to their existence. He paused, letting the implication sink in. They don't just fight you. They study you. They learn everything about you. They find every weakness, every vulnerability, every single point of failure in your entire civilization. And then they use that knowledge to make sure you never threaten them again. The hologram showed intelligence reports that had been flooding into Imperial Command over the past months. Human scout ships had been detected at the edge of every major Imperial system. Not attacking, not threatening, just watching, learning. They know where our food comes from, Admiral Thexavar continued. They know how our supply lines work. They know which worlds are critical to our infrastructure and which ones are expendable. They've mapped our entire civilization in 6 months, counselors. 6 months. Supreme Commander Vorthak's scales had shifted to a sickly yellow color. What are you saying? I'm saying that if we attack Earth with 1,000 ships, we might destroy them. But in the process, we'll have shown them that we're an existential threat to their species. And when humans decide something is an existential threat. Admiral Thexavar activated another display. This one showed strategic projections. What would happen if humans decided the Imperial Empire needed to be eliminated as a threat? The results were chilling. Using captured Imperial technology combined with their own innovations, humans could cripple the Empire's infrastructure without firing a shot, cut off trade between systems, disable communication networks, turn the Empire's own size against it by making it impossible to coordinate responses across 17 star systems. They could starve us out in less than a year, Admiral Thexavar concluded. And they could do it while never leaving their own solar system. Zara watched her professor's face as he narrated the recording. The High Command voted unanimously to accept human terms. For the first time in galactic history, the Empire backed down from a single system civilization. But that's not the end of the story, Professor Vextar continued. The hologram shifted again, showing recent intelligence reports from across the galaxy. Word of humanity's capabilities has spread. Other species, ones we've conquered, ones we've threatened, ones we've simply overlooked, have begun sending diplomatic missions to Earth. They're not seeking military alliance, they're seeking to learn. The display showed a parade of alien vessels approaching Earth's solar system, each one broadcasting the same message. We come in peace. We seek knowledge. We offer friendship. The humans have been remarkably selective about who they allow to visit, the professor noted. They seem to prefer species that have been victims rather than aggressors, species that have been conquered rather than conquerors. Thorne swirled nervously. They're building an alliance against the Empire? No, Professor Vextar replied, and his voice carried a note of something that might have been admiration. They're doing something far more dangerous. They're teaching. The final holographic display showed what intelligence reports called the Earth Accords. Not a military treaty, but an educational exchange. Humans were sharing selected technologies with species that had been oppressed by the Empire. Not weapons, but tools. Agricultural techniques that could end famine. Medical advances that could cure diseases. Engineering principles that could rebuild shattered worlds. They're not creating an army, Professor Vextar explained. They're creating a renaissance. They're teaching dozens of species to be self-sufficient, to stand on their own, to no longer need the Empire's protection. Zara felt pieces clicking together in her mind. They're making the Empire irrelevant. Precisely, her professor confirmed. In 50 years, maybe less, the Galactic Empire will find itself governing empty space. Every species we've conquered will have learned to be independent. Every world we've claimed will have developed its own defense systems. Every civilization we've threatened will have the tools to stand against us. The classroom fell silent as the full scope of humanity's strategy became clear. They hadn't just defeated the Empire militarily. They were defeating it philosophically, politically, economically. So what happens now? Pip asked quietly. Professor Vexatar turned off the holographic display and looked at his students. Really, looked at them, perhaps for the first time in his career. Now we learn, he said simply. We learn that the universe is bigger than our empire. We learn that there are different ways to be strong. We learn that sometimes the greatest victory isn't conquest. It's showing others they don't need to be conquered. He paused, then added with something approaching wonder. We learn what it means to encounter a species that looked at a hostile universe and decided to make it better, instead of just surviving it. Zara stared at the now empty holographic display, trying to process everything she'd learned. Earth still hung there in her mind, that small blue world that had looked so peaceful, so vulnerable. Professor, she said finally, What do you think humans would say if we asked to visit Earth? Not as representatives of the Empire, but as students? Professor Vextar considered this for a long moment. Then, for the first time since she'd known him, he smiled, a genuine expression of hope rather than arrogance. I think, my dear Zara, that they would probably say welcome. After all, humans seem to believe that the universe belongs to everyone who's willing to learn how to share it. As the class filed out, discussing in hushed tones everything they'd discovered, Zara lingered behind once more. She looked up at her professor, this being who had seemed so wise and powerful just a week ago. Professor, are you afraid of humans? He considered this carefully. Yes, he said finally. But not in the way you might think. I'm not afraid they'll hurt us. I'm afraid they'll force us to become better than we are. And for a species that has built its identity on being superior to everyone else, that's the most terrifying prospect of all. Outside the classroom window, stars twinkled in the vast darkness of space. Somewhere among them was a small blue world, where a species called humans had looked at the infinite hostility of the universe and decided to respond with infinite curiosity instead. The galaxy would never be the same. And maybe, Zara thought, as she walked toward the library to learn more about Earth, that was exactly what the universe had been waiting for all along.